What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to day number 32, the finale of 32 NFL offseasons in 32 days. For those of you just joining us for the first time today on the last day, go to the channel's main page. You will find your team in those videos. I have now completed all 32 NFL offseasons in the last 32 days. I have graded your free agency. I have graded your draft, and I know everything. So whatever I said in those videos, you can take it as gospel. Just kidding. A lot of those are probably going to look bad in a few years, but hey, whatever. But today we are talking about the Washington Commanders. First and foremost, I think it is completely reasonable to sit here and say to you right now that the Washington Commanders have won the offseason. They have had the best overall offseason of any franchise in the NFL because Dan Snyder, the much maligned owner of the Commanders, has finally sold this team and will no longer be around to drag them down and surround them in controversy. Congratulations, Commanders fans. Hopefully you guys now have a competent and decent human being as your new owner. That is awesome, and that in and of itself is worthy of celebrating this offseason. Hopefully the new ownership group recognizes that this is an investment, and the best way to maximize your ROI is to put money into it and put a good product on the field. So that's what I'm hoping for the Commanders and their fans, and I'm so glad for them that the nightmare of Dan Snyder is officially over. Last year, I'll be honest, not a believer in the Washington Commanders or their team. And I was kind of right. I mean, they finished last in their division, but if you put them in any other division in football, they do not finish last because they went 500. They went 8-1. That is a lot better. At one point, they were in the driver's seat for a playoff. We were talking about the NFC East having 4 playoff teams in it. That includes the Washington Commanders. They had a surprisingly decent season, but in a division that figures to be tough again this upcoming season, what have the Washington Commanders done to remain competitive? For the last time of the series, let's talk about it. Key addition. First addition that I want to mention, probably the most important addition for them this offseason, is not a player. It is new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, whom they absolutely stole from Kansas City. I was shocked that he chose to leave his cushy Kansas City job for the exact same position in Washington. And that's not a shot, Washington. I'm not taking a shot at you, but you don't have Patrick Mahomes on your roster. Why would he leave the safety of that job no matter what? Like, the offensive coordinator at Kansas City is going to be fine because he's got Patrick Mahomes. Doesn't have to do a whole lot. Andy Reid's calling the plays anyways. You just sit there and smile, pal. I think Bieniemy took this because he wants to prove a point that I can do this without Andy Reid and without Patrick Mahomes, and more power to him. He's betting on himself, and I respect the hell out of it. He was a fantastic offensive coordinator in Kansas City, and I think he'll continue to be a great coach in Washington. On the player front, not an addition, but a move of keeping a player. I like the extension for Daron Payne. Holy cow, did he get a bag, though. 4 years, $90 million. Woo-wee! That is a chunk of change, my friends. But they couldn't let him walk. They recognize that their strength is in that defensive line, and you can't let the big boy in the middle walk, not this year. So I like that one a lot. I like the addition of Andrew Wiley at starting. He was the starting right tackle on arguably the best offensive line in football last year in Kansas City. There's an argument to be made. Look it up. And he just followed his offensive coordinator. I think hiring Eric Bieniemy convinced him, yeah, I'm going to come join you over there, coach. So, excuse me, I like that addition. I like Cody Barton being brought in to try to replace Cole Holcomb. Cole Holcomb was solid for them, but he was banged up. Cody Barton, very similar type of player, and less injury history and a good bit cheaper than Cole Holcomb. So I like that addition. And I would be remiss to not mention their true biggest addition this offseason, bringing in legendary Playbook Sports podcast darling Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. Top-notch addition right there. Absolutely love that. Key losses. This offseason, they made the decision to let Taylor Heineke walk, which honestly surprised me. Every time he came in and was called upon to play for them, he did so with more energy and grit than whoever else was out there playing quarterback. Whenever he stepped in for the incumbent starter, he outperformed them every single time, and he was entertaining to watch. He was just out there playing reckless football, and it was entertaining. For nothing else, the entertainment value went up as soon as he stepped onto the field. I think they'll miss that spark that he brought. And then, obviously, they lost Cole Holcomb, who I was just discussing. Injured last year, but when he played, very efficient. So that's a tough loss, and maybe Cody Barton can fill that hole. I guess we'll find out. And then they also, obviously, they let Carson Wentz walk, but I don't consider that a key loss. His time as a starter in this league is finished. So, so long, Carson. He'll be a backup somewhere, and who knows, maybe he'll play again. Maybe I could be wrong, but from what I've seen, he's done. So in free agency, didn't really bring in a ton, didn't really lose a ton. So that being said, let's talk about the draft. With their first pick in the draft, I felt pretty confident when I'm doing mocks and looking at everything that they wanted either a tackle or a corner, as those were their two weak positions. I don't think they want Charles Leno to be the left tackle of the future, so I thought they were looking offensive line, and I also recognized that their corner room was weak. They watched the top 4 tackles all go by pick, 11? Pick 14. Broderick Jones was the last of the top 4, so just before them, but it set them up nicely to make a choice between the top 2 corners remaining on my board. Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon, or the corner that they ultimately ended up picking, Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State. Forbes has fantastic ball skills. 4 interceptions last season, and over his career, he's returned 6 interceptions for touchdowns, which is cool, especially when you consider the fact that that is the FBS record. So great playing the ball in the air. My only concern is one that you'll hear everybody say is his size. He's just over 6 feet tall, which is fine, but he only weighs 166 pounds. He is rail thin. He needs to get into an NFL weight room and put on some weight quickly because he's not going to go up against these little receivers that often. I mean, he's going to need, if you take a corner in the first round, you expect them to be able to cover the best receiver on the opposing team, unless you have somebody better than him. So Emmanuel Forbes comes in, he needs to be able to lock down. If you're going to be picked at pick 16, you better be able to lock down the top guy. And yeah, maybe he can cover Devontae Smith because they have a similar style of play. But man, you put A.J. Brown up against him. If Emmanuel Forbes is in one-on-one with A.J. Brown, it's over. A.J. Brown will put him in the dirt. I think that would go very poorly. Whereas at least Christian Gonzalez has the more prototypical size to go up against all sorts of receivers. So that was my only gripe with that pick is if Gonzalez is on the board, man, why not just take him instead of Forbes? That's just me. Hopefully Forbes can put on the weight and muscle necessary to cover the big receivers because he does have the ball skills to be really good. In the second round, pick number 47, they took Quan Martin, defensive back out of Illinois. And I say defensive back instead of corner or safety because he can honestly play both. He's super versatile. He's going to fill that Bobby McCain role for them that they just let walk, that he did for years, where he'll play in the slot and he'll play at safety too because he can do both. Super versatile. And so they just added some serious juice to their defensive back room with their first 2 picks. Kind of a bit of an overhaul. I like that. I did not love the Ricky Stromberg pick at number 97 because I think his best position is center. Yeah, he can play guard, I guess, but he was a center. And they just signed Nick Gates to play center. So either you wasted the money on Nick Gates or you're going to play Ricky Stromberg out of position. And I think, I guess that's just a depth pick. And there were players on the board that could have had a bigger impact in the first few years of their career than him, in my opinion. Honestly, with the Forbes pick being a bit of a question mark in my mind, the only pick I can truly get behind and be like, yeah, great pick, is the Quan Martin pick due to his versatility. I don't love this draft class. I give this draft class a C-. Overall this offseason, I'm going to start by just kind of giving you some background. Somehow, without a whole lot of star power on this roster, and a roster that appears to have maybe taken a step backwards from recent years, this team is 24th in available cap space. They are paying their defensive line 24% of their cap, and that is not counting Deron Payne's extension money that's going to kick in soon, and that's not counting the fact that they're going to have to pay Chase Young and or Montez Sweat at the end of the season. So they are going to have so much of their cap space just tied up in that defensive line, which I don't love. And even though they're paying their defense all this money, if the offense can't score, it just doesn't matter, and their offense is going to hold them back so badly, you guys. Jacoby Brissett, as much as I may love the guy, not an effective starting quarterback in this league, and I am not a believer in Sam Howell personally. If they were serious about competing, they would have gone and gotten one of the starting caliber quarterbacks that were available this offseason. But they didn't. They chose to take Jacoby Brissett on a 1-year, $11 million deal, too. They paid the man. This offseason, I would say, was probably net even free agency-wise, with some losses and some additions. Kind of just a little swap around, nothing too crazy happening. But kind of a rough draft class brings it all down just a little bit. So for their offseason overall, I give them a solid C. Now, you guys, I got a special treat for you because sitting here right in front of me, I have the Washington Commanders script for the 2023 NFL season. Here it is. They are going to be bad this year, spoiler alert. They have a harder schedule than they did last year, going up against a division that has improved from last season, and no true starting quarterback. This is going to go down a rough path. When, not if, they start slowly, I think Ron Rivera gets the old heave-ho, gets told to pack his bags, and then Eric Bieniemy fills in at head coach. I think that's what he signed up for, was to be the pseudo-offensive coordinator for half a season until they fire Rivera because they stink. I think that midway point in the season when they are not looking good, I think Chase Young and maybe even Montez Sweat both get traded for some draft capital. I think Washington wants pick number 1, and I think they want some cap relief, and I think they're going to try and get Caleb Williams out of USC and then make Bieniemy the full-time head coach after that. Give him the interim tag and then make him the full-time head coach and hopefully form their own Reed-Mahomes combo. I think that's the plan. That's what this season's going to be. That's the script. Stink this year and land the big whale of the draft. Washington fans, what do you guys think about that? Are you willing to stink this year? Do you think your team's good enough to make a deep run? Because if not, this might be the time to stink and go get one of those top 2 quarterbacks. If it's not Caleb Williams, get Drake May then. And then hopefully you have something to go forward with, because the way this roster is built, a little bit of a reset is not a terrible idea in my opinion, especially when you look at the upcoming draft class. That's just my line of thinking. So that's all I've got for you guys on the Washington Commanders offseason. I want to thank you all for checking these videos out. Might take a day in between uploads here, but we'll have our next series coming at you soon. I don't know what it is, but we'll have something coming out real soon. So thanks again, guys, for stopping in, and we'll see you guys in the next one.